Desperate search and rescue operation is now underway in the North Atlantic this morning after a mini sub disappeared on its way to the wreck of the Titanic. It's operated by the US-based company called OceanGate Expeditions.
The expedition began with at most 96 hours of oxygen on board for the 5 people hoping to view the Titanic's wreckage.
It is a remote area, and it is a challenge to conduct a search in that remote area.
Now rescuers are racing against the clock to find the missing submersible.
First, I want to say OceanGate, horrible name for a ship that you don't want anything bad to happen to. Putting gate at the end of something, historically has usually been things that ended in disaster. But I digress. The search is underway for a submarine that went missing 2 days ago on a voyage to explore the wreckage of the Titanic. 5 passengers are on board, and as of right now, experts say the submarine has less than 40 hours of breathable air left inside. Last year, though, CBS reporter David Pogue did a story on the vessel, and he had some serious doubts about its structural integrity.
An experimental submersible vessel that has not been approved or certified by any regulatory body and could result in physical injury, disability, emotional trauma, or death. Where do I sign?
Oh, take your shoes off. That's customary.
Okay. Wow.
Inside, the sub has about as much room as a minivan.
So this is not your grandfather's submersible. We only have one button, that's it. It should be like an elevator. It shouldn't take a lot of skill.
The Titan is the only 5-person sub in the world that can reach Titanic depths, 2.4 miles below the sea. It's also the only one with a toilet, sort of. And yet, I couldn't help noticing how many pieces of this sub seemed improvised.
We can use these off-the-shelf components. I got these from Camper World. We run the whole thing with this game controller.
Come on!
That's right, the submarine is controlled by a game controller. I've since learned that that's pretty standard for this type of vessel. However, that game controller costs $29.99 right now on Amazon, and I wouldn't use a controller like that to control my PS4. I definitely wouldn't trust it to control an entire submarine vessel. But the man that you saw leading that tour is OceanGate CEO Stockton Rush, and he's one of the 5 passengers who's currently missing in the submarine. Reporter David Pogue was interviewed yesterday following the sub's disappearance, and he gave his analysis as to what might have happened.
What do you think happened here? From having been in it and having experienced it, and you talk about the mechanical issues, I know it's purely a guess, but what is your best guess?
I can tell you exactly. There's only a few possibilities. So this thing has 7 different ways to return to the surface, different ways of releasing ballast or inflating air balloons or using the propellers. So there's backups of backups of backups. So if it is not at the surface, then only one of 2 things could have happened. Either it snagged on something, like a big fishing net or even part of the Titanic, or there was a leak, in which case it would implode instantly and it's over. So if you want to look optimistically at it, they lost power, but they have 3 more days of air and they're bobbing on the surface somewhere, and we just can't find them because they don't have power.
He also gave the pretty grim details that recovery might not even be possible if they find the ship.
Yeah, I found it interesting that the Coast Guard there basically said this is a 2-pronged search. 1, potentially 2.5 miles beneath the sea, or 2, maybe somewhere at the top. And this area is so remote, it's possible.
But one problem with what the Coast Guard said was there's only 3 operating subs in the world that can go to that depth. Okay, so even if they find our sub with the ping, with the sonar, there's absolutely nothing they can do about it. There's no way to bring it back to the surface. There's no way to let them escape. That the hatch, by the way, is sealed with 17 bolts from the outside. So there's no way to escape when you're inside to get out without a crew on the outside letting you out.
Things are looking pretty grim. And honestly, I've seen a lot of experts say that the best case scenario for these for these 5 people in the submarine is that there was a pressure issue and that they died instantly, which would be a lot, apparently, obviously less horrific than having to wait out the rest of the breathable air. But let's get into how this voyage was sold to anybody and who in their right mind would get in this vessel. From CBS News, OceanGate billed the trip as an opportunity to, quote, become one of the few to see the Titanic with your own eyes. The company said the fee for securing a seat on the vessel was $250,000, according to its website. The trip wasn't billed as mere tourism, however, with OceanGate noting that each of its dives has a scientific purpose. Now, we have the images, as you just saw, from the passengers who were confirmed being on the ship. Among them is British businessman Hamish Harding, Pakistani businessman Shahzada Dawood and his teenage son Suleiman, and French explorer Paul-Henri Nargeolet. And as we mentioned earlier, Stockton Rush, the CEO of OceanGate, the company that operates the vessel, is also on it. I do want to mention that there was another tragedy at sea that happened earlier from CNN. The sinking of a packed migrant boat off the coast of Greece may be, quote, the worst tragedy ever in the Mediterranean Sea, according to the EU Commissioner of Home Affairs, Ylva Johansson. Dozens of people were killed and hundreds more left missing when the boat traveling from the coastal city of Tobruk in Libya to Italy capsized off the coast of Greece earlier this week. True toll of this disaster is yet to become clear, and it seems to me a little upsetting, the amount of money and resources being put into recovering the submarine of 5 people versus being put towards the mission of recovering the many more migrants in the Mediterranean Sea. I've seen a lot of people saying that, it's the trip to go to the Titanic was $250,000. These are exceptionally rich individuals. So it seems like the diversion of resources towards them, it's definitely classist at the very least.
Yeah, I mean, as usual in our society and world at large, money talks. I mean, look, man, I think it's horrible what's happening to those people in that what did they call it? A sub flotation device? You're not allowed to call it a submarine. Like, it's just horrible. I can't for the life of me understand why they just want to stare at the Titanic and risk their lives for the pleasure of doing so, for just looking at a boat that's 100 years old. I don't understand that impulse, but obviously it sucks anytime somebody has to pass. And yeah, these migrants trying to make their way to a better life after being in a war-torn country, probably. By the way, war-torn and messed up because of policies enacted and inflicted upon them by the West. Yeah, that's pretty sad. It's pretty awful. And obviously it's something that we should take note of. But yeah, I don't know. I feel bad for these guys in the submarine, Ray. But what like you guys paid $250,000 to get in that thing. Like, that seems just insane to me. It's not even like these guys were working and they had to use equipment that didn't allow them to properly do their jobs. Like, these people signed up to do this in this rinky-dink, janky-ass apparatus. It's kind of crazy.
Right, they definitely signed up knowing there was a massive risk. They had to sign waivers that they were aware that of the massive risk it posed to their lives and safety. And they watched countless tests of this vessel fail and still willingly entered into it, which for the pursuit of what? To see something that you could see in a movie, to see something you can see pictures of. And they keep calling them explorers, like they're 15th century sailors. I feel for them. I want them to be alive. I want them to be found. I want them to be safe. But there is a huge discrepancy between them and the people who are literally fleeing for their lives, who are just they're not even being treated as human in the media. They're not being treated as human by those European countries when they get there. Particularly Italy has a long history of refusing to accept these migrants. And that's the reason why there was that many people on the boat in the first place, was because they had to take an illegal back channel to get there, because the actual proper way of immigrating there, and even as a refugee, is being significantly slowed down and hindered by these European countries.